Well, Chris Froome has just uploaded a reel to his Instagram feed, and that's the blue tick Chris Froome. A lot of other imposters, but that's his one. And that's reel is about him having a front wheel change where the mechanic is spending some time changing the front wheel, and then you can see the other competitors just riding by. So the theme of this video is that the disc brake, the change of the wheel because of the disc brake is costing him time. So let's roll an intro and let's have a little bit of a discussion about rim brakes, disc brakes once again. Well, this is the thing when it comes to competitive racing. Now, even if we argue that disc brakes are better and they can stop the bike quicker, your percentage of braking time through a whole race, I would probably be predicting it would be less than 3%, probably even less than 1%, especially if you're a pro. The more time you're on the brakes, you're actually dissipating your forward motion or the energy that you put into your bike into heat energy. And of course, that's just wasting energy. It's just wasting performance. So unless you really need to brake, if you can pick the right line and limit your braking, then that is going to carry you through the corner with more speed. And also you're rubbing off more speed from using the brake. So even if they're disc brakes or rim brakes, it doesn't matter. You want to use the brakes as little as possible. And that's in the pro peloton because obviously you want to maintain that energy and carry that through the race so you're not having to put more energy into bike to accelerate the bike up to speed. So that is the whole principle. So your brakes are being used for a very little amount of time. So even if you say, hey, look, disc brakes are better, let's just say they are. Let's just say, yeah, you can stop a meter, 2 or whatever, 3 better than rim brakes. Well, if that's the case, the amount that they're actually saving you going to all that design is significantly less than if you get a flat and you have to have a wheel change and the through axle jams or whatever, or you're having trouble getting that disc into the caliper because it's got hot or for whatever reason you have any complications, because it's more likely to have a complication with a disc brake than it is a rim brake fitting a new wheel. And also you could also have issues using disc brakes depending on what brakes they're using or the wheels, and because as we know, if you've watched Pete talk, is not all of the discs sit in the same spot. So if you're taking a general wheel from a team, then it may not fit that well and you may have continuing rubbing. So there's all those factors about disc brakes. So he's trying to point out in this reel that if he'd been on rim brakes, he wouldn't have lost anywhere near as much time. And I have to agree with him. Even if we argue that disc brakes are better, and let's face it, rim brakes are pretty much dead now. All of the bikes are coming out with disc brakes. It's pretty hard to get a rim brake, even if you want to get a group set. I'd imagine you'd have to special order something from Shimano or whatever to have a rim brake group set. They're basically, they're almost dead in the ground. So rim brakes, that's why I haven't made a video about rim brakes for a long time, because pretty much if we're going to argue we want them back, it's just not going to happen. But this actually shows that at that level of racing, disc brakes can be a significant Achilles heel when you're racing, because if you get a flat, the time you lose is going to be far more than the extra braking distance you're going to gain from having disc brakes on your bike. So the net loss, if you have one flat in your race, your net loss is going to be greater than any benefit that you're going to have from disc brakes. And Chris Froome has shown that, and we've had that on this channel, has spoken about rim brakes and how you have continual rubbing of disc brakes and he doesn't like them. We've also had his mechanic on this channel talking about how difficult they are to keep in a premium operation. They're very, very fiddly. They're very difficult to set up. And as soon as you set them up, they go and do a mountain hill downhill descent. They need adjusting again. So they're a very, very fiddly piece of equipment at that level. I know people say, I've got disc brakes, I don't have any problems, but they're probably just riding around and not pushing them and heating them up and getting them to a condition where they're getting hot and expanding and contracting where it can affect their alignment. Anyway, you may disagree with that, that's fine, but you can't disagree with the fact that when you have a flat, it's going to cost you a lot more time in changing the wheel than it is a rim brake. Rim brakes are just so easy. You just got the quick release. You quick it, you whip it, it drops out, you drop it in. I mean, if you've watched any of the races like years ago when they had rim brakes, the time it took them to change a wheel was like unbelievably quick. So that is the reality, and no matter what you have to argue, changing a rim brake wheel on a rim brake bike is far easier and much quicker than changing a disc brake, because it's just you're having to fit that disc into that very fine thing. You actually have to unscrew it, you have to re-screw it. We've had problems where they've had heating and people they have to use drills. Most mechanics have got like electric drill now to try and get them out. We've seen them get stuck and then they just chuck the bike and they have to give them a new bike. So disc brakes can be a real pain in the A when it comes to getting a flat. Now you might argue, yeah, you don't always get flats in races, that's good, but we do, for some reason, see the pros do seem to get, I don't know why, they do seem to have quite a few flats. Well, anyway, in this case, Chris Froome is flagging it on his channel and showing that, hey, I'm a bit pissed off with this disc brake bike. Anyway, guys, leave your comments down below. What do you think? Do you think that Chris Froome is just whining and he should shut up and just ride his disc brake bike? Or do you think that he's got a point? And if he'd had a rim brake bike, that gain he would have had in front of those guys, he would have been able to maintain. Okay, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. And I will see you next video.